think there's anybody that has had a bigger impact in the field of direct response than Dan Kennedy.
The legend of Dan Kennedy should be ignored at your own peril.
They're not really lessons, they're kind of laws that you live by.
Dan opened my eyes to what small business marketing looks like.
Dan teaches strategic direct response that is timeless.
His ripple effect touches people who don't even know his name.
The world as we know it was changed because Dan Kennedy became obsessed with marketing.
Welcome to the Magnetic Marketing Podcast with your host, Dan Kennedy.
And Dan wrote this one sentence which says, writing copy is only a small part of developing copy that sells. So writing the copy is a very small part of it. And the truth of the matter is, I actually think it's the smaller of the two, although it's important. Really, I believe the preparation for it is more important beyond that, because that's where you're really able to overcome all objections, and you're also able to get into the psychological triggers that have people actually want to buy from you. So with that said, that's perfect. We can actually just leave that up for me, to be honest with you. So when you are first looking at writing copy, the very first question to ask is, who am I writing to? Who am I going to write to? And what you're going to see tonight is the first thing you're going to see, which is the most expansive part of this presentation, is a campaign I wrote for a member. I believe is Jeff Weiler. Where are you? There you are. What is your level of membership? Diamond member Jeff Weiler, who I wrote this campaign for him, and Jeff is in the business of buying mortgage notes. So he wants to really it depends on what he'll tell you versus what I tell you. What I tell you is the truth, but he's really in the business of being sort of like the broker for the mortgage note. So he's not really buying them. He's finding somebody to buy them for somebody who wants to sell them. But he and I had these semantics going back and forth, but that's really what he's doing. Am I right? You're finding a broker to do this. So, private mortgages. All right, okay, we'll get to that because we'll show that here. So anyhow, we went back and forth for a while as far as who would be his ideal customer that he can actually buy their notes from, and finding somebody else to actually buy them. So we came up with this following list. Number one is note holders. They have to hold a note. Number two is, and this is really important, a credit score less than 700. So which we would have preferred less than 600, but we couldn't find less than 600, but we could find less than 700. Now this is substantial, because when I first started talking to Jeff, and he's been already trying to do this prior to meeting me. When I first started talking to Jeff, he was buying a list of note holders, but he was buying a list of people with note holders with all kinds of credit scores. So they could have had a very high credit score, and they could have had a low credit score. But what we found is that the credit scores less than 600, which we would prefer, but really we were able to get 700, is a better list for us to buy. Why? Because those are people that, because they got crappy credit, they need money. So we were going to go after people who needed money because they had to sell this. So again, this is the who. The other thing is the note is between $100,000 and $500,000. That's our sweet spot. That's his business's sweet spot. We want to buy notes between $100,000 and $500,000. We also want to know what city, state, zip they live in, that actually the note is in, because that's really what we get, is where the note is at. So what city, state, and zip is in, because in certain areas, it's easier to get people to sell their notes than in other areas. So geography was important to us. We, mom and pops, which is kind of what Jeff just talked about, which is sort of like, not big sophisticates really, but mom and pops are our best people to buy the notes from. And when you see testimonials in a second, you'll understand that. Or else, if they weren't moms and pops, rehabbers, investors, flippers, or land developers. So those are 4 other areas, but the real sweet spot for us is moms and pops. Now, this is significant, what I just showed you, because when I first started to do the work with Jeff, it was really as we were just buying a list of people that had note holders. That's what we were buying. But now by going to this, narrowing it down substantially, We now are buying much smaller quantities of folks, but much more targeted to deliver our message to them. Because here's the thing, and this is worth writing down. The best thing that can happen when somebody receives your marketing message is for them to say to themselves these magic words, which is, "This is for me." When they say, "This is for me," that makes the job of the sale infinitely easier than somebody thinking, well, this is for people, not just for me, but for other folks. So the more narrow we can actually get the who, the better. And this was a big, big step for us. It took us a couple of going back and forth by phone and Jeff doing some research before we can narrow down the who. And the big thing was getting the credit scores less than 700, which we finally were able to do that. So the first thing is getting the list. The next thing is emotional triggers. Is why would somebody want to sell their note? Why would somebody want to sell their note? So we made the list of emotional triggers. So in this particular case, here they are. Convert your note to cash before the Fed's next interest rate hike. It was raised 17 times since June of 2004. So before the interest rate hike was raised again, you want to sell your note now because if you don't, you're not going to get as much for it. Convert your note to liquid assets. You can have access to should be the cash right away and the security that goes with it. So you can get money right away. Have the money available for unexpected medical fees, buying another property or retirement. And actually, the unexpected medical fees is one of the biggest commonalities that I saw with the testimonials that Jeff had of people that he actually sold notes for. Avoid estate conflicts. So this is when somebody passes away, now the family is fighting over the note, so you can avoid the conflict. Pay off personal debt. You have debt, you need money, you pay it off. Worry about getting paid by your borrower. So now you've got a note, you're getting paid every month by the borrower of that note, and you're worried about you getting paid. And the property is not in good shape and worried it's not a good security. So now the people that are at the property, they're not taking care of the property, and the property is no longer in good shape, and you're worried that your security is suffering. Now, these are all the different emotional triggers. And so now what we don't know is when we get this list of people who have credit scores less than 700, we don't know which one of the emotional triggers applies to them. So what do? We do all of them. We attack them all. Because what we want is the person to say, this is for me. So when you develop your emotional trigger list, now you know all the things that you have to overcome. Because if you can hit the right hot button in your conversation with them through the written word, they will say, this is for me. So you got to do them all. So you got to make the list, the emotional trigger list. Very, very few people do this before they write copy. And unfortunately, most copywriters, when they're writing copy for other people, they're not really asking for this. What do they normally do? They say, well, give me your sales letter and I'll go try to fix it for you. That's what they say. And they're not doing any kind of research to really figure out all these emotional triggers. So the first thing is the who. The second thing is the emotional triggers. What are the reasons that would create somebody the desire to sell their note? Now, this applies in any business that there is. What are the emotional triggers of the business? And who is the person that is your ideal customer or prospect that you want to market to? The next thing is credentials. So you want to credentialize yourself. In this particular case, here's what I had to work with Jeff. He's the president of New York Commercial Lending. So he's got this company. He's the president of it. That's the credential. He's the president. He's affiliated with a network that has purchased over 30,000 notes within the past 30 years. Now, what is that? That is a credential which we are doing is a borrowed credential. So he hasn't particularly purchased 30,000 notes within the past 30 years. He's only really been in the note purchasing business for the last year or two. I'm not sure exactly how long, but I don't think it's much longer than that. But he's affiliated in a network of other folks that have purchased over 30,000 notes within 30 years. So that makes it look like he's purchased 30,000 notes within the last 30 years. We're not lying. He's affiliated in that network. He's trained, this is another thing. It's another kind of borrowed credential. He's trained by and formed an affiliate partnership with a top note buyer who has assembled an elite group of buyers, including banks, savings and loans, principals, and individual investments. So he was trained by a guy that is the top note buyer, and he has an affiliate partnership with him. What's his affiliate partnership means? That he can now take, once he finds this note, he can sell it to this guy. That's an affiliate partnership. Now, this sounds pretty cool, right? He's got a pretty good credential here. Really, the only thing that he's really got mostly is he's president of New York Commercial Lending. But we are borrowing credentials through other associations that he actually has to make him actually bigger than life. Clear ways to respond. This is a big one. This is what we call, getting the ball down to the red zone but forgetting to score. The analogy in football. So what you always want to do, and a lot of people make this mistake, is they do not give people this is now that we got your attention, now that we want you to do the thing which is to respond in some form that we tell you how to respond. What is the clear ways to respond? In this particular case, we have a couple of them that we use different ways. One is to call a toll-free number. The other one is to go online, as you'll see, to fill out some information. And the third one is you could actually go to a website to also fill up information. And we use them differently in different applications, as you will see, in order, depending on the situation. But a very clear way to respond. So the question that you want to ask yourself is when I make my offer to somebody, what is the very clear way to tell people to respond to my offer? By the way, this works face-to-face selling as well, not just on paper selling. Then there's the offer. So we have to have an offer, right? Because if you don't have an offer, there's no reason to even send anything to anybody without an offer. So in this particular case, here's what we created as our offer. We created Jeff's personal guarantee. I'll get you top dollar for your note while always treating you with honesty and integrity. That's his offer. I will get you. So it wasn't just, and this is after going back and forth a little bit with Jeff, it wasn't just getting you top dollar for your note, but it's getting you top dollar for your note and also treating you with honesty and integrity, because we are purchasing a list. These people don't really know Jeff yet. Now, we got all these credentials we're giving them, but they don't really know Jeff yet. So we're going to be we want to make sure that they understand that honesty and integrity is a very important part of what we are doing. And then, but if you have an offer, you must have a deadline. By the way, if you don't have a deadline, my advice is don't even market, don't even send anything out at all. So you always have to have a deadline, because even with the greatest offer in the world, it doesn't matter if somebody says to themselves, gee, this is something that I want to do, but there's no reason for me to have to do it now. I could do it later. And the thing, when I was in the menswear business, we used to always call that the Be Back book. People would come in our store and they'll say, I'll be back. You know how many times they came back? Like almost never, okay? Matter of fact, when the person came back on the Be Back list, we were shocked, okay? It was like hardly ever came. So you got to have a reason for somebody to respond right away. So our deadline was right now is the best time before the Feds hike interest rates again and your note becomes less valuable. That is our deadline. Now, the other thing that you have to have is, now this is something that we did a lot of work in. So when I first worked with Jeff, I said to Jeff, when the people contact you, what do you need to know from them? 45 minutes later, he was finished going through his list of all the things that he needs to know from them. Now, we went back and forth on this a lot. And every time he would sort of tell me something, I challenged him. I said, well, don't you already kind of know that? Or do you really need to know that? And do you need to know that? And basically, we got this thing down to 3 things he needs to know. Now, what I'm showing you here is not the first rendition of this. This is the next to the last rendition. Because where I had Jeff at was 6 things he needs to know. This is the next to the last rendition. Then finally, after going back and forth with him, we actually figured out all we needed to know was 3 things. That's all we need to know. So to get started, I only need to know the answer to these 3 easy questions. So we did not need to know approximately when did you sell your carryback note. We didn't need to know that because we knew that when we got our list. We could see that on our list that we purchased. We didn't need to know approximately how much did you sell it for. We knew that when we got our list. We didn't need to know approximately how much is the note for because we knew that when we got our list. So we didn't need to know that crap. We already knew that stuff. So there's no reason for them to be asking them that information over again. And if we were off by a little bit, we were close enough. But the 3 things that we needed to know was how much you're receiving as a monthly payment. And going back and forth with Jeff, and Jeff has talked to hundreds of people, he's basically told me when they call him, they know that. They know what their monthly payment is. So it wasn't anything that they had to go look up. They already know it. Approximately what percentage you're receiving for your monthly payments on time, and they already know that, what percentage of their monthly payments are getting on time, and what is the approximate term or length of your note. Those 3 things they know. So they don't have to go look at anything. When they call him up, they already know that information, so that there's not a speed bump now. There's no reason why I've got to now not call Jeff because I already know this information. So it's very non-threatening. Once he gets that information, he's ready to move to the next step. Now, is that the only information he needs to know? No. He needs to know more information later. But for right now, to get somebody to respond, you want to make the response as easy as possible. So what are the 2 things that we've done to make the response easy? Number 1 is clear call to action. This is how you respond. And number 2 is minimum information that it's not very troublesome to somebody to now go find this information. As a matter of fact, in this particular case, they pretty much already know this information. So they can pick up the phone and talk to Jeff right away without having to look anything up at all. Very, very important. I find, and I see it a lot, and with private clients that I work with, I see it a tremendous amount, is the whole sales process gets too complicated. Now, there's reasons sometimes that sales process should be complicated, but if you can simplify the sales process, it makes for the job of the sales so much easier and better to do. Somebody calls up a law firm, has a DWI. What happens typically when somebody's calling the firm? Lots of information is asked of the person on the phone, of the person that's got a DWI. The reality is you can really simplify that information. You don't have to ask them so much. I work with a client right now that is in the Google AdWords purchasing business. Very complicated. Google AdWords, not purchasing. Google AdWords purchasing. They purchase for other people. We extremely streamlined his entire sales process to like 25% of what he was doing before. And he still had enough information to move forward. So you want to make the sales process as easy as possible. Okay, the other thing you got to have is you got to have a guarantee. So here's the guarantee, which was pretty cool, by the way, that we came up with, Jeff, which is this. My personal guarantee to you, I'll buy you a $100 gourmet dinner for 2 at your favorite restaurant if I don't get you top dollar for your real estate note. That's his guarantee. And by the way, we went back and forth on this a little bit. Should we strengthen it? Which we could. We could have made it a $200 gourmet dinner for 2. The truth of the matter is, the states, the areas that we're buying these notes in, you can't buy a gourmet dinner for more than $100 at these states. So that was a very plausible amount of money, was $100. So we went back and forth on that, and we came up with that. So again, all this was happening before the first word was ever put down on a sales letter. All this background information, which, by the way, as you'll see shortly, once you get all this, the actual writing of the sales letter is not that difficult. This is the much more difficult part, is doing all of the research to what you got to do. And then the next thing was relevant testimonials. Now, relevant is the key word. Relevant is the key word. So it's easy to get testimonials, but we want relevant testimonials. So we want testimonials that overcome objections. So you make the list of what's the reason why somebody would not buy, and you want different testimonials that overcome those objections. You want testimonials that have emotional triggers, so that delivers emotion. There's also, obviously, right now, there's lots of discussion about outcome testimonials. And so pretty much right now, I am staying away from outcome testimonials until everything with the FTC is all sort of worked out. So I'm sticking with two types of testimonials right now. One of them is ones that overcome objections, and the other one is the ones that actually evoke emotion in the buyer. And you'll see, when I get to it, you'll see exactly what I mean by that when I get to the actual sales letter. These are the 5, by the way, that I used, and all of them fit that bill, and you'll see to it in a moment when we get to it. Okay, then we create headlines. We got to have a headline. The most important part of any ad or sales message is let's try it all together. The most important part of any ad or sales letter is right, and the reason why is because it's the ad for the ad. It's the thing that gets you to read the rest of the ad. So if you don't get them to read the rest of the ad, what good is it? So you got to have a strong headline. So what do I always do? When I create these things, I don't make a headline. The first thing I do is I make a list of headlines. Usually I make no less than 10, and I've made as many as 100 headlines. Years ago, when I wrote a sales letter for my BGS marketing system, I created 100 headlines for that before I settled on my final one. But let me show you a couple of the ones I came up with. The first one is an open letter to everyone who wants to get out of the rat race of owning a real estate note and wants to cash out for top dollar. One of my first headlines. Pretty good headline? Pretty good, right? You better believe it is. I wrote it. The next one is, you don't know me, I realize, but I want to sell your real estate note for top dollar before the feds raise interest rates again. Now, I like this one because it kind of has my testimonial in there. So, again, we incorporated before the feds raise interest rates again. Here's another one I wrote. A surprising and simple way to sell your real estate note for top dollar before the feds raise interest rates again. Very similar to the last one, just a little tweak on it. Next one is, others have sold their real estate notes for top dollar because they believed in me and my network of buyers. Remember, he has a network of buyers. Not one lost. Pretty good headline. Guaranteed to get you top dollar for your real estate note fast, or I'll buy you a $100 gourmet dinner for 2 at your favorite restaurant. So in that one over there, we've incorporated, I'll buy you a $100 gourmet dinner for 2 at your favorite restaurant, which is part of our guarantee. So that's a pretty good headline. So they're all good. So which one should you use? Huh? What? I can't hear a word you're saying. Okay. Well, yeah, you should test all of them. But for today's purposes, I picked the one I like the best. So, but you should test them all and some variations of all of them. So here is, now I've got all my research done. And it took us a while to get all this research done, especially with going back and forth with the list. That was the longest thing that it took us to narrow down the list. So here I've created a 3-step campaign with Jeff, okay? So step number 1 is the personal letter. I'm sending out a personal letter. So before you send out the letter, you have to put that in an envelope. Now, we are buying a list. These are not people that know Jeff yet. He just bought a list. So the envelope that I decided to use was almost a pure blind envelope. And this is to Susan Boyle, by the way. So what do I got? I've got Jeff Weiler, his address, in a blue handwritten font. So it's not, if it was pure blind, it would not have a return address. But it's as close to a pure blind as I'm going to use here. It has the name that it's going to, Susan Boyle, and it has multiple stamps. Why does it have multiple stamps? Multiple stamps outperform single stamps. So if you use multiple stamps, you'll get a better result because you want it to look like a friend is sending a friend a letter. So instead of, I don't know, how much is postage now? I don't even know what it is. 41. So this thing must be 34 cents and 7 cents, I hope. I don't know. I can't even read it from here. But whatever it is, we use multiple stamps, and maybe we didn't have multiple stamps in the office, the exact amount, I don't know. But you want to use multiple stamps because it looks more like it's a personal thing. Personal letter, a friend sending a friend. If your grandmother was sending you a letter, she would use multiple stamps, okay? Because whatever she's got, she's going to make it work. So this looks like you get this in your mailbox. It says now, hey, I got to open this up because somebody just sent me a personal letter. Now I'm going to open it up. Here's my letter. And I'll read it to you. So here's what I did. The first thing is from Jeff Weiler, president of New York Commercial Lending. Okay, from Jeff Weiler, president of that's the little subhead all the way up there at the top. Why did I put that there? Immediate credential. Boom. Jeff Weiler, president. Okay? Here's my headline. I did a tweak on the headlines I showed you. Guaranteed to get you top dollar for your real estate notes, so some of them might have more than one note, in 1001 zip code in Omaha, Nebraska, or I'll buy you a $100 gourmet dinner for two at your favorite restaurant. What did I do? I took one of my headlines and I inserted in it the zip code and city and state. Because the more somebody says, this is for me, the better the result. If now I own a note in that zip code, in that city, in that state, you're talking to me. So I took one of my headlines and I made it much more powerful by actually using city, zip code, and state. So the gray that you see is a field that every one of these that goes out, whatever zip code and state it's in, that field there is filled out for that person. Then I went on to say, or I'll buy you a $100 gourmet dinner for two at your favorite restaurant. And then I went on to say, dear real estate note holder. Now, actually, if I wanted to strengthen this a little bit more, I should have gone with Dear Susan Boyle. So if I wanted to actually make it a little stronger, I would actually use the person's name in the salutation. Or, better yet, probably Dear Susan. Then it goes on to say, you don't know me, I realize. But I want to buy your real estate notes between $100,000 to $500,000 for top dollar before the Feds raise interest rates again, causing your note to go down in value. Okay, so let's go to this line right here. You don't know me, I realize. Have you seen that line before? Where did you see it? It was a headline. I reused the headline I liked as an opening sentence. So I already had content. So now I went back to what I already created. I figured out, okay, if I didn't use it as my headline, I liked it. You don't know me, I realize. I used it in my opening sentence. Then I went on, but I want to buy your real estate notes between $100,000 and $500,000. Why is that important? That's what we want. That's where their note is. We bought the list between $100,000 and $500,000. What are they going to say? You're talking to me. Okay? You want them to always say you're talking to me. For top dollar, before the Feds raise interest, by the way, the words top dollar are all capitalized. You think I did that accidentally? Top dollar, strong words. Those are words that are emotional triggers. I made them all cap. Between $100,000 and $500,000, that's bolded. I want that to stand out. Before the Feds raise interest rates, again, causing your notes to go down in value. So what did I do right there? I created fear. That is my deadline pitch, which creates fear, is, hey, my notes are going to go down in value. My name is Jeff Weiler. I'm president of New York Commercial Lending, but when we talk, please just call me Jeff. Okay? So now this is about honesty, integrity. We're on a first-name basis. Don't call me Mr. Weiler. Just call me Jeff, okay? So we're starting to bond with them. Here's what this is all about. Whenever the Feds raise interest rates, the note that you are holding the mortgage on decreases in value. And here's a sobering thought. The Feds have hiked interest rates 17 times since June of 2004, and everything indicates that they're about to do it again. More fear. Why not convert your note into cash before the next rate hike and get top dollar now? The word now is all capitalized. It's italicized. It's an important word. Now. Of course, there are several other reasons it makes sense to get top dollar, all capitalized, for real estate notes like yours right now. See how many of these apply to you. See if you recognize any of these. You need money available for medical fees, buying another property, retirement, and unexpected bills. Have you heard that? It was part of my research. So I'm right up that. You need money for one of those things. You can't stop worrying about getting paid by your borrower. emotional trigger. You need to pay off personal debt, emotional trigger. Your property has not been kept up and it isn't in good shape, and you're worried it's no longer a good security, emotional trigger. I'm covering all the emotional triggers right up front. Next page. Let me go to the next page. You prefer to turn your notes into liquid assets so you can have access to the cash right away and the security that goes with it. Another emotional trigger. Avoid family estate conflicts after you're gone. I covered every emotional trigger that we came up with in all those bullets. So whatever one that they said, hey, that applies to me, I went after them. So they would always say, this applies to me. Okay, then I go on to my next subhead. Well, I'm here to help on an entirely risk-free basis. What two words of that subhead are the ones that stand out to you? You think that was done by accident? Risk-free. So they're all capped and they're underlined, okay? And by the way, they're not even underlined continuously. They're underlined separately. Actually, it's a little copy cosmetic to make them stand out even more. So risk-free. I want them to see risk-free right up there. I have been personally trained, now you'll love this, I have been personally trained and formed an affiliate partnership with the top note buyer in the nation who has assembled an elite group of buyers, including banks, savings and loans, principals, and individual investors. Collectively, we have purchased over 30,000 notes within the past 30 years. Does any of that content sound familiar to you? I'm credentializing again, right from the research that I did. Not only will you find working with me a great decision, but I'm actually willing to guarantee it with my personal guarantee to get you top dollars for your real estate note fast, or I'll buy you a $100 gourmet dinner for two at your favorite restaurant. Stick my guarantee right there. And also cosmetically, it's black and blue, and top dollar is all capitalized and underlined. The word guarantee is all capitalized. Not all words are created equal. So you got to figure out which words are more important than other words, and those words have to be the ones that are standing out. Because there's a basic principle. We just talked about it recently in Copy Confidential, which is a program that we offer that you get to sort of see behind the scenes of what we do at Glazer Kennedy. And this is something called double readership path. Is if somebody was just taking this letter and skimming it, they would get, the key words would pop out of them. So let me ask you all a question, and I'll continue. I'm going to go through the whole letter. Let me ask you all a question. If you got a 4-page letter from somebody in the mail, would you start at the beginning and read every word after? No. What would you do? You'd skim, right? So when you skim, you have to figure out which words you want to stand out so that those words are the ones that connect with you. Now, once you skim and you see things that interest you, what do? You go back and read it. So the whole idea here is to get them to grab their attention so they'll go out. So when somebody is interested, they will do all the research in the world. Right now I'm looking to buy an Aston Martin, okay? And I got to tell you something. I am reading like crazy about Aston Martins, okay? I'm not reading about Porsche. I'm not reading about anything else. I'm reading about Aston. So I'm interested in that. I want to get all the information I can possibly get on Aston Martins. So when you're interested in something, you'll go back and get as much information as you possibly can. The whole nonsense, and I guess I should bring it up right now, this whole nonsense about who's going to read all that shit. You know what I mean? It's a long sales letters versus short sales letters. And, if you make it so somebody wants to read it, they're going to want to get all the information they can. If they're not interested at all, it doesn't matter how little or how much you got. If you're boring, it doesn't matter how little or much you got. Okay, let's move on with our sales letter. I just finished ranting. Okay, that's right. I'm even willing to put my money where my mouth is. So we use a little metaphor there. Money where my mouth is, and personally guarantee you that if I can't get you top dollar for your real estate note, or I'll buy you a $100 gourmet dinner for two at your favorite restaurant of your choice, is that fair or what? So this is now putting your money where your mouth is. I'm re-emphasizing the guarantee, and I'm using the words, is that fair or what? What is that? That's an involvement device. You're now answering a question in your mind. I'm getting you involved in my conversation. Is that fair or what? We have an involvement device. Of course, I couldn't make an offer like this to the hundreds of people just like you I've sent this letter to. If I couldn't deliver, I'd go broke by giving away gourmet dinners. So you better believe I'm going to get you top dollar. Now, that's just makes a ton of sense sentence. So you're probably wondering, hey, listen, you must be really going to get me top dollar because I'm sending this out to hundreds of people. If I have to buy them all lunch or dinner, whatever it is, I would go broke. That makes a lot of sense. So now I'm really thinking to myself, gee, he's really going to get me top dollar. For example, just read the comments below, and at the end of this letter that come from people just like you, I personally help get top dollar for their real estate notes. Okay, let me read you the first testimonial. This one is from LC and Evelyn Goff in Mexico, Texas. That's what I said. Mejia, Texas. Did you say Mexico? Okay. Jeff Waller and his people at New York Commercial Lending were essential in getting our notes sold fast. We are in our late 70s, and due to medical bills for my heart attack, my wife and I have fallen on tough times, and we were living in a drafty, half-built house and driving in an unreliable car. The $70,000 that he got us was the top dollar and was essential to get us into a decent home and car and put some money in the bank. An emotional testimonial. These people are like in a drafty house and they got medical problems. This is all about emotional. And we worked in here. This is an actual testimonial. We didn't write this. These people actually exist, right, Jeff? Thank God. So also in here, it's hard to see up there, but there are words in here that are highlighted. So like the word top dollar is highlighted and underlined, because that's really important words. Here's another one we got from Mitch Miller. When it comes to buying real estate notes from note holders, structuring real estate note deals, or investing in real estate notes, Jeff Weiler is the man. I have sold notes to him and have invested with him, and I can personally attest to his honesty and integrity on anything he says or promises. So here's somebody that's kind of an investor that's doing it with him, and now we're working in the honesty and integrity. Whole different testimonial than the other testimonial. The other testimonial were older people, medical conditions, bad car, drafty house. This guy is a guy that buys and sells notes, and now this is an honesty and integrity testimonial. Two different testimonials completely.
Thank you for listening to the Magnetic Marketing Podcast with Dan Kennedy. If you love hearing in on these lost Dan Kennedy talks and speeches and calls, then please let someone else know about this podcast. That's how you can help it to grow. And the more it grows, the more free Dan Kennedy we can bring to you. Also, Dan would love to give you the most incredible free gift ever, designed to help you make maximum money in minimum time. Now, this free gift comes with almost $20,000 in pure money-making information for free, just for saying maybe. You can get this gift from Dan right now at nobsletter.com. Not only will you get the $20,000 gift, you're also going to get a subscription to 2 marketing newsletters that will be hand-delivered by the mailman to your mailbox each and every month. One from Dan Kennedy and one from me, Russell Brunson. To get this gift and your subscription, go to nobsletter.com right now.